Welcome learners. This week we are going to discuss a new unit that is from block 3. The unit is on health and nutrition of the tribals. Let us look at the objectives of this unit. Good health is difficult to define, but it is certainly more than just the absence of disease. It reflects a state of mental, social and physical fitness and well-being of the individual and is strongly influenced by his or her lifestyle. Health and nutrition are very intimately related aspects of an individual's biological status. Both are under the influence of hereditary and environmental factors. After reading this unit, the learner will be able to understand the health status and health problems faced by the tribal communities, understand the various factors influencing the health of the tribal communities, understand the nutritional status and able to assess the nutritional deficiencies that characterize the health of the tribal communities, and understand the scope and area of social work intervention in tribal health and nutritional problems, and will be able to develop health strategies on how to work with the tribal communities. Now, we all know that human beings need a wide range of nutrients to lead a healthy and active life, and these being derived through the diet which man consumes daily. The food contains various substances that are required for growth, development and maintenance of the body. These substances are called nutrients, which are proteins, carbohydrates, fats, vitamins and minerals. The amount of each nutrient that is required by man depends upon his age and physiological status. Adults need nutrients for maintaining constant body weight and ensuring proper body functions. Infants and young children who are growing rapidly, they require nutrients not only for the maintenance of body functions but also for growth. The infants and young children require relatively more nutrients, that is 2 to 3 times per kg body weight than the adults. In special physiological conditions like pregnancy and lactation, adult women, they need additional nutrients to meet extra demand for fetal growth and maternal tissue expansion in pregnancy and milk secretion during lactation. So, these extra intakes of nutrients are very essential for these extra intakes of nutrients are very much essential for the normal growth of an infant in uterus and during the early postnatal life. Health is a multifaceted aspect and has been defined by WHO as a state of complete physical, mental and social well-being, and is not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Health and health related problems are very much interlinked with the socio-economic conditions of the community, particularly the tribes who are living in remote and inaccessible areas where healthcare and development services of the government are not available. So, there is an urgent need to understand the concept of health among tribes and the traditional knowledge and health seeking behavior. The health seeking behavior of the tribal group is associated with their beliefs, customs and practices. Health status of different communities, particularly the tribal group, is influenced by their way of life, including their social and economic conditions, nutrition and living conditions, dietary habits, taboos and superstitions, etc. So, in this unit, we will be discussing on the health and nutritional status, health problems of the tribal communities in general, and what are the various factors influencing it. Also, we will discuss the urgent and the emerging issues which are concerning the tribal health and nutrition, and this will enable us to develop health strategies for social work intervention. Now, let us look at the health status of the tribal. The tribal groups in India inhabit widely varying ecological and geoclimatic conditions, like they live in hills, forests, deserts, etc. And they are at different stages of social, cultural and economic development process. The scheduled tribes, they differ considerably from one another in their biological characteristics, language, cultural practices, beliefs, and in their socio-economic characteristics. The health of these tribal groups is a function of the interaction between socio-cultural practices, genetic characteristics, and the environmental conditions. If we look at the overall health status of the tribal community, that is dependent upon the effects of environment in which they live, like the genetic characteristics, cultural patterns, and their lifestyles of the tribal groups, healthcare delivery service in tribal areas, and their detached attitude, largely accepting the modern healthcare services at the initial stages of the disease. The problems of the tribal health cannot be studied in isolation from the general population of India. The tribals suffer from the same diseases as others with marked preponderance of infective over degenerative diseases. The tribals who have remained isolated will soon be exposed to the rapid pace of development and industrialization in our country. The general health problems of the tribal resemble those of the rural and underprivileged sections of our society. These comprise malnutrition, anemia, parasitic infections like diarrheal and respiratory disorders. The life of the tribal is so affected with these disorders right from birth that the average life expectancy is much lower in contrast with the national average of 58 to 50 years. Basu in the year 1996 suggested that there is an urgent need for initiating area specific, group specific, health need specific, action research studies among the tribal communities in India, so that the health oriented action research studies ultimately help the authorities in formulating effective need based healthcare strategies among various tribal groups in India. The widespread poverty, illiteracy, malnutrition, non-availability of safe drinking water and sanitary living conditions, poor maternal and child health service, ineffective coverage of national health program, and consanguineous marriages have been found to affect the health status of the tribal adversely and also responsible for some of the specific illnesses including genetic disorders. It has been found that certain states like Madhya Pradesh, Orissa, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Assam, and in some other areas, certain diseases like goiter, yas, malaria, and guinea worm are endemic. The primitive tribal groups of India have special health problems because of their ignorance, unhygienic conditions, and lack of health education and non-availability of healthcare facilities in their habitation areas. There is general agreement that the health status of the tribal population in India is very poor, and many scholars have tried to establish this with the help of morbidity, mortality, and health statistics. The low health status of tribal community in general is closely linked with factors such as their poverty, illiteracy, lack of infrastructure facilities for medical care in the area where they inhabit, the gradual encroachment by the modern society on the natural resources of the tribal and depleting them of their habitat and exposing them to the apparently alien modern acculturation is a continuing stress which could result in a variety of health problems, both mental as well as physical. Therefore, in order to have a better understanding of tribal health, let us discuss the tribal concept of health and perception of disease and disease causation along with the health problems and other dimensions. Now, let us see in detail the concept of health and perception of disease. There are 705 tribes located in 5 major belts in India according to Census 2011. Each tribe is not only geographical specific but also culture specific. Hence, what is true in one case may not be true in the other case. The tribal belief of causation of disease can be broadly categorized into two areas. They are strong believers of natural theory of diseases. According to them, when man falls out of harmony with nature, he suffers from illnesses and becomes susceptible to diseases and accidents. Hence, there are the rituals to restore balance and harmony with nature. The treatment is influenced by the cause of sickness which is perceived by the group. The tribals have some scientific knowledge learned through traditional experience, and this knowledge is part of their socio-cultural religious system. If we look at the treatment procedure amongst the tribals, that can be broadly divided into preventive and curative methods. The preventive procedures include the use of charms, amulets, animal sacrifice propitiations of disease-seeking spirits, worship of God belief in protective function of rituals. The curative practices include first worship of deities and spirits. To the tribals, religion and medicine are not separate. It has also been found that some tribals practice their traditional system along with the Western system of medicine if available. Although the concept of well-being and the notion of the disease varies between different tribal groups, yet in tribal habitat, a person is usually considered to be afflicted with some diseases if he or she is incapable of doing the routine work which is usually being expected to be carried out by that individual in the society. That is, incapacitation from work is the universal index of poor health. Thus, the concept of ill health becomes functional one and not clinical. This is precisely the reason among many tribal groups, example Kutia Konda, Muria, Madia, Batra, Halba, Jaunsari, Santal, Lodha, Kharia, Bil, Rathwa, Meena, Chatapu, Saura, Pando, Kaiwar, Oran, Munda, Kenors, Dorias, and among many others, symptoms such as pains and ache, weakness, scabies, prolonged cough, mild fever, wounds, etc. So, these diseases, they are not taken seriously as symptoms of disease. A tribal in general hardly makes a distinction in the magnitude of fever. However, within the limits of their own respective worldview, most of the tribal societies have definite means for identifying and classifying various kinds of ailments and diseases. It may be worthwhile to state that at least one component of health is universally seen among the tribal societies, and that is committing or omitting certain acts. In other words, breach of trust is thought to bring upon some kind of affliction on the individual or a family as a whole. Various diseases like measles, tuberculosis, diarrhea, cholera are some diseases where individual's action may cause some concern to the family, clan or the village. Interestingly, the causation of such disease is independent of the sanitary condition of the community or the individual. The fate of the individuals and the community depends on their relationship with unseen force which intervenes in human affairs. If human beings offend them, the mystical power punish by causing sickness, death or other natural calamities. The tribal people, they believe in the presence of benevolent and malevolent spirits, the former playing a protective role, while the later, that is the malevolent spirits, they are considered being responsible for causing disease and epidemics. So, it is a common observation across the tribal culture that the ancestral spirits, they play important role in the prosperity and protection of the family, and they have to be properly honored, for otherwise they will bring wrath on family members. So, these spirits are believed to bring a state of physical, mental and social well-being to the members of the family. There are many spirits who are feared because of their power to afflict people by bringing a number of diseases. The role of the spirits, ghosts and deities in the tribal life in the causation and treatment of diseases is so important that the local tribal people have to seek the help of traditional diviners, medicine men, sorcerers like Sirha, Gunia, Bua, Jani, Bopa, Oja, Pujari, etc., for appeasing, controlling, or driving away the disease causing agents. If you see the frequency of worshipping or getting in touch with the malevolent spirits, this is more common because of their immediate effect on the day to day life. The studies indicates that the tribals in Bastar, Fulbani, Mayurbhanj, Sundargarh, Panchmahals, Purulia, Dumka, Dehradun, Gadchiroli, Barmer, Walset, Kinnaur and Udaipur practices offering through sacrifice for health related purposes is very common among them. However, it is important for us to know that the tribal scene in India does not present a uniform canvas in terms of beliefs and health seeking behavior. Broadly speaking, about 4 different strata of the tribal population have been discerned. As per the strata, the belief system and concept of health and disease do differ. For example, on top of the strata is the acculturates layer, who have adopted more or less the way of life of non-tribal sections forming the upper crust of the society. They have travelled the farthest from their original tribal habitat. The second are the settled tribes, agriculturists in the fringe plains, who have come quite some way from the tribal highlander. Being no longer isolated, they are in the process of transformation. And the tribal from the northeastern parts of India can be categorized in these 2 strata because of their lifestyles and belief system. They are much more advanced than the other tribes in India in terms of their understanding towards health and disease causation. And the third category is that of the highlanders, who, having hardly shifted from their habitat, they have undergone little transformation and may still practice shifting cultivation. And the last category is of the still isolated backward groups, including the so called primitive groups, who are encrusted in their original habitat, having little exposure and consequently have preserved their original socio-economic cultural traits. Then when we look at the 4-fold classification, it does not represent any rigid or watertight compartments, but is meant merely for the sake of comprehension of the scenario in a very general way. Now let us look at the state of health and healthcare in tribal areas. The problem of lower health status of tribal people is global. A recent international review revealed that health and social outcomes were poorer for tribal people than for the rest of the population in most of the countries. However, it is not nature's inviolable law. The life expectancy among indigenous people is more than 70 years in the high income countries. Infant mortality rate for indigenous people is less than 10 in the high income countries. The tribal people in India, they form a heterogeneous group with a huge diversity. Yet the one commonality among tribal communities in India is that they have poorer health indicators, greater burden of morbidity and mortality, and very limited access to healthcare services. There is also a near complete absence of data on the health situation of different tribal communities. In the absence of a comprehensive picture of tribal health in the country, various policy measures and government programs are often ad hoc. In the coming sessions, we will see the details of what are the factors affecting the tribal health and nutrition, current status of health and nutrition indicators, and what are the appropriate strategy to be followed for overall development of health and nutritional status among tribals. So learners, hope to meet you in the next session. Thank you.